Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Rose. If you don't know me already, I am the DevRel person at the Khronos Group, responsible for looking after Vulkan and OpenXR developers. I want to start by saying thank you to ARM for having us here and adding an official Khronos welcome to you all. It's great to see so many developers here thinking about using Vulkan. It's really, become a bit of an uptick amongst developers in interest in Vulkan for a variety of reasons. My talk is going to just be 10 minutes with maybe some time for questions at the end. It's designed to give you an update on what's been happening with Vulkan, as well as show you some of the things we've been doing to kind of improve the developer experience. It's not technical, so please don't rip me apart for that. I'm the only non-technical talk of the day. So. Oh, please use the Vulkanised hashtag, which just disappeared there. Go back. Yes. This here. If you're going to post anything on Twitter, please use that so that we get some collective feedback. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Khronos Group. I see members in here, obviously. But just in case you're not familiar with them, over 140 industry-leading members, which you can see here. This is a little out of date. We've now had EA join us, and we'll have a few other developers on here very soon. It's open to all companies, so you don't have to be a large megacorp to join Khronos. You can be a university, you can be a small startup, you can be a game developer or a game publisher. It really is about what do you want to get out of contributing to the standards that Khronos manages. Like I say, open royalty-free standards with a robust IP framework. It's one of the most robust in the world. It basically protects everyone's IP from being misused. And crucial thing there, it's not open source, it's open standards, which is a difference. So we often get questions asking why the code isn't necessarily open source. And just in case you hear me use this phrase, because I use it at work all the time, individual standards like Vulkan, like OpenXR, are maintained by working groups at Khronos. So if I accidentally use the term working groups, I'm referring to the body responsible for the standard. And here are some of our standards. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them, like OpenGL, OpenGLES, OpenCL, but some of the newer, more currently active ones, not to put the others down, but the ones that are most relevant to the games industry: Vulkan, Sphere, OpenXR if you're working in VR or AR, and GLTF is becoming quite widely adopted outside of games, but also within games. People are starting to look at GLTF. This is an important slide. I'm not going to tell you why, but you'll know later. This slide is got a lot of text on it. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it all out to you. This is just to show you that we've moved from a stage of setting Vulkan up as an API into a stage of more maturity and maintenance, where it's about building up the support structure for the API, improving some of the the problems that people were having with 1.0, and kind of going from this is a new API to how do we improve what we've got and make it more stable, more reliable, better tools, more features. Animation, sneaky animations. So, one API to rule them all. This is one of my favorite slides. As you can see, we have a total of 11 operating systems or platforms that you can use with Vulkan. This is one of its greatest strengths. I gave a talk about this at Reboot that was more specifically about why Vulkan is particularly interesting and hot right now. So you can see Nintendo Switch, Android, SteamOS, you can do all the Windows platforms. You can go on to using Metal, which... Is anyone familiar with Molten VK at all? Has anyone used it? Okay, Hans Christian from ARM. One from ARM and one from Valve. So this is part of the Khronos Portability Initiative, and essentially it's something that was started up to take code, Vulkan code, and make it run on Mac and iOS, and it's actually been a huge success in terms of the actual performance and stability of it. So it's a great initiative. And I've put a red box around the newest member. Obviously, Google Stadia is the latest addition to the platforms that support Vulkan. I'll just quickly go into that now. So I'm sure everyone saw Google's talk at GDC, showing off their new platform. That runs, it's all cloud-based, it runs on AMD hardware, and it's running Vulkan 1.1, so it is Linux-based. So if you do want to support Stadia or work with Google on Stadia, you will need to use Vulkan. And if you're more interested in the process of actually developing with Stadia and Vulkan and how what that experience is like, we had Ubisoft Montreal come to our dev day at GDC this year and give a talk on how they ported Assassin's Creed Odyssey over to Vulkan and then Stadia at the same time. And that's a very, very, very good talk, which manages to not get too code heavy, but also just explain some of those vital differences, because they were porting from DirectX to Vulkan. Great talk. Very much encourage you to watch that one. And here's some of, obviously, game engine adoption. There's actually many more than this that are being used by developers in-house that we don't have their logos on here because we can't really use them without permission. But these are the sort of core engines and companies that are making use of Vulkan in their own engines. Right. This is a slightly messy slide showing you some of the content that's come out using Vulkan. Obviously, you have some older stuff like Doom, Serious Sam, Wolfenstein 2, but we also have, No Man's Sky just announced they've moved to Vulkan on PC. Rage 2 launched last week with Vulkan support only, and that, I will point out, had very good performance reviews, very stable. Strange Brigade, Rebellion, who aren't here today, but would like to be, mentioned that they've been doing excellent work with Vulkan for some time now, and World War Z as well came out. Valve have been using Molten VK to move their games over to Mac and iOS, and Feral, who are with us in the room, have been doing excellent work on Linux with Vulkan on Total War games, as well as some others. So this is kind of, as you can see, this is trying to build the idea that there are people slowly an increase in Vulkan content throughout the year. And there's much more coming, but I can't use it yet because it's not announced or released. On mobile, quite a similar story, some new titles coming out. Samsung worked with Epic on Fortnite on Android to bring that over to Vulkan. PUBG. Galaxy on Fire 3 is particularly interesting because they're one of the first games that also used Vulkan to port to Switch. So they have Galaxy on Fire 3 running at 60 FPS on Switch with Vulkan. And there was an excellent talk at Reboot Develop, which we're hoping to get the videos up from soon, from Deep Silverfish Labs explaining how they did that. And this one's very important. Unity have just, who are a big supporter of Vulkan, have just announced that they will, or have spoken publicly about the fact that they will use Android, Vulkan as a default on Android going forward from version 2.29.1, I believe. Someone would have to correct me on that one. Okay. Yeah, and here's another example of other apps that have shipped with Molten VK on Mac OS and iOS. So Artifact, and the point here is, excellent performance despite it being effectively a wrapper. So, moving on then away from an update and more into what are we doing and how are we looking to improve the API and the support we give you as developers. Very important, we do listen, so going back to Gemma's request for survey responses, it may be Vulkanized specific, but we are very keen to understand how successful this event is, why you like this event, can we do more events like this, so please make sure you do that survey, not just for the beer ticket, but also because we will look at it and it will be very important and useful to us. But the working group, the Vulkan group that manages Vulkan, are listening. So a lot of the feedback I bring back to them, they see elsewhere on the Slack, or they see on the forums, or on social media. It does get taken back to the group, and it is taken into consideration, which is why you see things like new extensions and features, The Lunergy just recently donated their SDK to Khronos so that it could become the Vulkan SDK and remove any kind of confusion between what is officially Khronos and what is not. So Lunergy's SDK was always officially the Vulkan SDK, or one of them, but now it's the Vulkan SDK, removing that ambiguity. NVIDIA just launched Vulkan support in Insight, which is a great improvement. We've been running an education survey, or we did earlier this year, which gave us a huge amount of feedback. I don't know if anyone in this room filled it in, but we had a huge amount of feedback from the community about how we could improve learning with learning Vulkan. And that's something I've been focused on quite a lot, is how do we improve our materials, and I'll get into that in a moment. And me being here, this role existing is the working group deciding that we needed to support developers more as we move into this stage of increasing amount of content coming from developers and requests. It's a good idea to have some Khronos specific developer relations. And here's a list of some recently released extensions. I'm sure there's more since this slide was created, which was maybe a month ago. And I'm not going to tell you what they do because I'm not a technical guy. I'm sure there's many people in this room who could. I'm looking at you, Tobias. It just shows that there is constantly new stuff being added, either at request of developers or because it makes sense on a particular vendor's hardware or everyone's hardware. So we are maintaining the standard quite actively. And that's been cut down somehow. This is BKEXT. This is basically all of those extensions you just saw. A really good place to find out what each extension does is to go to this lovely short link, and it takes you to the spec that's chunked, so it loads quickly, and you can find out what each extension does. So please use that to find out, because there's a lot of extensions and they do lots of different things. Some other useful learning materials. Some of you obviously know Vulkan already, but for those of you who are new or considering, okay, now it's time for us to start looking at Vulkan, these are some very good materials. Obviously the Vulkan spec from Khronos is a great place to find very granular detail on every part of Vulkan. The YouTube channel, we have a huge amount of videos on the YouTube channel, and when we did the education survey we found that half of people didn't know they existed, so I'm shouting out now, if you're looking for particular topics or a talk on something, I encourage you to go on the Khronos YouTube, and there's content from 4 years worth of talks there from different members, and you can find a lot of valuable stuff there. So for example, that Assassin's Creed Odyssey talk I plugged earlier is on our YouTube channel. Vulkantutorial.com, this is one of the most popular learning materials that we have. A large number of people use that. I encourage you to go there. It's kind of an A to Z style tutorial where you start from the very beginning and make your way down. That's excellent. And Sasha Willems as well, he has a bunch of tutorials and samples. His tutorials are a little bit more focused and on a particular topic. But he has a whole load of samples starting from very basic to more complex topics. So again, please check that out. So what are we doing in developer relations this year to make your lives hopefully better? We're working on creating a unified location for all of the Vulkan samples. Now, I say all, what I mean is all of the major samples. So the end goal of this is how do we take this current disparate collection of samples that people are using and struggling to find in some cases if they're new, and put them in one place where you guys can find everything you need and improve that. So that's something we're working on this year, and that's making pretty good progress with that. We're already getting into kind of the first stage of making that real. And part of that is reviewing and refreshing samples. As those samples are added to the new repository, the unified repository, they will all be reviewed. So we're going to refresh the Vulkan website. The Vulkan website was an excellent launch website. It had all of the details you needed for a new API, but now it needs to transition into something that becomes a useful resource for the developers of where can I find everything I need to learn Vulkan, where are the drivers, the SDKs, and all that kind of stuff. So that will be happening. Consolidating learning resources and identifying missing areas, that goes back to the website refresh, consolidating learning resources there and in other locations like the Unified Samples repo, so that there's less of this fragmentation of locations for the and identifying missing areas. So increased collaboration with members and active developers on blogs, case studies, and tutorials. If you're working on some Vulkan content and it's very cool, I want to know about it, and I want to work with you about how can we help promote the fact that you're on the cutting edge of technology and doing very interesting things with Vulkan. If you want to write a blog with us, or maybe we can collaborate with a member, you and us, about Vulkan, we would love to talk about that. And I am always shouting about tools and drivers, etc., to make sure that the group remember that that's, you know, one of the huge points that developers, pain points that developers sometimes have. I want to invite you all to join our Slack if you're not in it already. It says over 700 users. It's more like over 800 at this point. It's constantly growing, and it's a place I wanted to create for the developer community to just casually be able to ask questions, chat about announcements. We have members in there, so often we find people ask a question and get help from a member or someone else in the community. For example, Sasha Williams is in there and is often providing help to new people, so it's an excellent resource to ask for help or raise an issue or a bug that you're coming across. So please join us there. It's a very easy, quick link. And I want to finish by showing you guys today's schedule. We obviously have a lot of very good talks. This is very important, the pub quiz at the beer festival. I encourage you all to join us there. There will be prizes, but I won't say what they are. So thank you very much. One thing I would like to say at the end is repeat what Gemma said. We will be sending out a survey after the panel. It's going to be done through SurveyMonkey. It can all be done very quickly. It takes less than 5 minutes. And please, yes, you have to do it to get your to get your beer ticket and so on. But we will really look at that and use that to improve Vulkanised in future years or expand it as needed. So please fill that in. And anything you have to say about Vulkanised on Twitter, please use the hashtag. My email there, if you ever want to talk to me about anything to do with Vulkan, I'm here today. Happy to have a beer with you guys later and chat about any questions you have, or the projects you're working on. I'm keen to learn about every project that's using Vulkan. So thank you very much.